When Karen, the president of the HOA, took my RV without asking for permission, I decided to get back at her with an unexpected plan, making her pay dearly for her infringement on my property rights. Welcome to Karen Karma. Have you ever encountered an HOA Karen? Share your story in the comments. Karen is a woman who everyone in the neighborhood is afraid of. As the president of the HOA, she feels entitled to control everything, from the smallest details to the bigger issues in the lives of the residents. Her actions always make everyone feel as though her power is limitless, as if she could invade at any time without thinking. Not only does she intrude into others' homes without notice, but Karen also doesn't hesitate to make decisions about things that have nothing to do with her, as if everyone has to obey her. In this way, she constantly makes people feel like they're just meaningless pawns, with no power or respect. As for me, I am someone who lives simply and always respects others' privacy. I don't like to stir up trouble or create more conflict in a neighborhood that is already quite peaceful. I always avoid arguments and just want to live a peaceful life. However, there is one thing that I cannot overlook: Karen repeatedly taking my RV without asking for permission. One morning, when I woke up and went outside to get the newspaper, I was shocked when I couldn't find my RV in the yard. The garage door was slightly open, and there was no sign of the familiar vehicle. My heart sank. I stood there, looking around, a sense of unease rising within me. I silently asked myself, what just happened? Being cautious by nature, I was sure I had parked my car in the right spot the day before. But now, my vehicle was gone, without a trace. Slowly, I went back into the house, trying not to let my confusion show. At that moment, I couldn't help but feel that something was off. I started to recall recent events, remembering the times Karen appeared with a bright smile, always looking at me as though she was in control of everything. When the car still hadn't appeared by the afternoon, I couldn't sit still any longer. I decided to go outside and check the neighborhood. And then I saw my RV parked right in front of Karen's house. My heart tightened. I felt utterly offended. The feeling of violation was indescribable. I could see my vehicle standing there, being misused by a woman who had no consideration for others' rights. At that moment, Karen appeared from the house, holding a bag and walking toward the RV. The sunlight was shining on her, but to me, everything seemed blurry. I could no longer control my emotions. Rage surged inside me, but I tried to stay calm. I quietly went back inside without saying a word. Karen's actions weren't just a one-time thing. They were a series of repeated incidents, making it impossible for me to sit idly by any longer. Every time I came home, my RV was no longer where I had parked it. At first, I thought maybe I had forgotten or made a mistake, but when this kept happening, I couldn't help but notice something strange. The first time, I was merely annoyed, but when the vehicle disappeared again, I began to pay closer attention. I stood still in the yard, looked around, and then saw my RV parked right in front of Karen's house. A sense of emptiness filled my heart. No way. She took my car again without asking. Once again, I thought to myself, this wasn't the first time, nor the second. Every time this happened, I thought I would remain silent, not cause more trouble. But by the third or fourth time, I couldn't ignore it anymore. She had continually taken my RV without asking for permission, as if I had no rights to my own property. I couldn't help but feel angry every time I saw my RV parked in front of her house, not because she used the vehicle, but because she thought she had the right to do so without even asking me. I couldn't let this continue anymore. It was time for her to realize that my property rights were not something anyone could just violate without consequences. One morning, I happened to overhear Karen bragging to a few neighbors about an upcoming picnic. "We're going on a picnic, bringing the kids and friends. It's going to be so much fun." And of course, I've already prepped my RV, Karen said smugly, not knowing that I was standing not far away, listening to every word she said. Right then, I knew she was about to take my RV again without asking for permission. A feeling of frustration washed over me, but I decided that this time, it wouldn't be so easy for her. I needed a perfect plan to make her feel the invasion she had caused me all this time. That night, I drove to a store specializing in insects where I bought 2,000 cockroaches. I knew I was doing something somewhat malicious, but Karen's repeated actions left me with no other choice. I spent the whole night preparing everything carefully, making sure every cockroach could hide in places she would never suspect under the seats, in the door cracks, even inside the engine compartment. The next day, when I was sure Karen had taken her family and friends onto my RV, I sighed and began to observe from a distance. They had gotten on the vehicle and were preparing to leave. I saw Karen smiling, confident as though she owned the RV. But I knew this time she wouldn't be able to escape the lesson I had prepared for her. As the RV slowly disappeared from view, I told myself it's time for her to understand what it feels like to be invaded. Now, all that was left was to wait. The feeling I had at that moment was a mix of suspense and excitement. When the RV returned, I was ready. All I had to do was wait and let Karen face what she truly deserved. Sure enough, the next day, Karen boldly took my vehicle again without even asking. She opened the door, and the slight creaking sound was heard as she entered without suspicion. A smug smile on Karen's face, just as always, full of power. "Oh, why does this RV smell strange?" Karen mumbled, feeling discomfort from the musty scent. She sniffed and entered, unaware that beneath every seat, in every crack of the doors, and in every hidden corner of the RV, thousands of cockroaches were waiting for her. She sat down on the back seat, adjusted the seat for comfort, then threw her bag onto the seat next to her. It must just be the damp weather, Karen told herself, not noticing the change in the air. She turned on the air conditioning and relaxed, thinking the trip would be great. But just after a minute, something she could never have imagined started happening. A small cockroach crawled up her hand, making her jump. The sudden jolt caused the seat to shake slightly. It must just be a bug that got into the RV, Karen thought, waving her hand absent-mindedly. I'm not going to worry about this small thing. But just a second later, another cockroach began crawling up her leg, followed by another one appearing on the seat. She panicked as she saw them rolling out from under the seat, one by one, crawling onto her body. "Oh my God, this can't be happening," Karen screamed in horror. Dozens of cockroaches crawled up her body wildly, from her legs to her arms, then spread to her back and neck. "No, don't do this to me," she screamed in panic, her face pale, her eyes wide open, her mouth trembling and unable to say a word. The cockroaches clung tightly to her, crawling out from every corner of the RV, as though the RV had become their world. Karen jerked up, trying to shake them off, but the horror was relentless. One cockroach crawled onto her hair, then into her shirt, making her even more frantic. "No, please, someone help me," she screamed, her eyes full of fear, her limbs trembling as she struggled. "Why is this happening?" she cried out, her voice echoing in desperation. Her body seemed to lose all strength, unable to move or resist. Every time she swiped her hand to knock off the cockroaches, another wave of them appeared from all sides. Karen's panic escalated to the point where she could no longer bear it. At this moment, she opened the RV door, screaming wildly as she ran out. "Help me! Oh my God, help me!" Her screams echoed in the air, chaotic and frantic, while the cockroaches continued to follow, pouring out behind her with every step she took. Her face was pale, sweat soaked her clothes, and her hands and legs trembled uncontrollably. Her hair was disheveled, her shirt soaked through, and everything became a whirlwind of utter fear. The entire neighborhood could hear Karen's screams. I stood from a distance, watching her run frantically, and in my heart, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Karen could no longer tolerate it. She rushed out of the RV, shouting in panic, running out of the yard, staggering towards me, her arms still flailing, her face pale with fear. As she approached, I noticed she was trying to control her anger and fear. You're crazy. You know I will never forgive you. Karen shouted, her face red with rage, still trembling. You can't treat me like this. I looked at her calmly, not letting my emotions take over. Oh, this is my RV, ma'am. How many times have you disrespected my property? Did you think I would remain silent forever? I replied, my voice calm but firm. Karen began to scream, unable to keep her composure. What have you done? You can't behave like this. This is a criminal act. I will sue you. I will make you pay. She continued to shout, but I was not afraid. While she was still panicking and trying to regain her composure, I realized that her actions were only making her appear weaker. I didn't rush, just stood there watching her, not letting her affect my emotions. You created this situation yourself. Your actions have violated my property rights, and now you understand what it feels like to be invaded. Besides, what could you possibly sue me for? There's nothing illegal about me protecting my rights. Seeing that she had no response, I knew I had spoken the truth. But Karen wasn't easily deterred. After a period of struggling, she decided to get back at me in what she thought was a way of retaliation. She hired a lawyer, attempting to sue me for my actions, claiming I had committed a crime by invading her property. She even appeared on a television show, trying to slander me, inflating the situation to tarnish my reputation. But everything backfired completely. The residents of the neighborhood, who had witnessed the event, stood by me. They began to recount how Karen had repeatedly invaded others' property without permission, how she had abused her power within the neighborhood. These stories quickly spread, causing her to become more and more isolated. The court not only dismissed Karen's lawsuit, but also ordered her to compensate me for the disturbance and the deliberate creation of a fabricated incident. She had to take responsibility, not just legally, but also for the embarrassment she had caused in the community. She failed miserably. When Karen finally faced the truth about the consequences of her invasive actions, she could do nothing but lower her head and silently accept the costly lesson she had brought upon herself. As for me, after everything, I could only continue living a peaceful life, no longer having to worry about Karen's invasions. I knew she would never forget this lesson. After the situation reached its peak, Karen could no longer escape the consequences of her actions. Although she tried to maintain her dignity, the reality was that the panic she faced when confronted with thousands of cockroaches in the RV had caused her to lose all composure. She even had trouble breathing and had to stop several times when trying to call for fumigation services to deal with the mess she had caused. She had to pay a huge sum, amounting to thousands of dollars, to handle and disinfect the RV. The fumigation service came to the site, but couldn't do anything to restore the vehicle completely to its former state. It wasn't just about repairing the RV. She also had to face the embarrassment that could never be erased. She tried to contact experts, but no one could make the RV return to how it was before. The vehicle now carried a terrifying past that Karen could never forget. I couldn't accept losing the RV like that. Karen was forced to replace it with a brand new one. However, Karen could not regain her peace in her own vehicle. Even every time she sat in the driver's seat of her own RV, the images of the cockroach and the sound of her own screams haunted her mind. She couldn't sit in the vehicle without feeling the panic repeat itself. Every time she opened the door, the suffocating sensation and fear would rush back. I bet she would never forget my RV. The scene of Karen screaming in panic, running wildly through the neighborhood, with disheveled hair and a face red with fear, made the entire neighborhood burst into laughter once the video was shared. Someone quickly uploaded the video to social media, and within hours, it became a viral sensation. The whole neighborhood, even many people from outside the area, knew about the scene. Karen's screams not only spread but became the hot topic of discussion across social media platforms. She couldn't have imagined that her panic would turn into a joke for so many people. Sarcastic and mocking comments flooded under the video. The online community continuously shared and commented on Karen's embarrassment, making it impossible for her to maintain any dignity. Karen, did you forget how to control power? Or, when your power meets the bitter truth, or comments that many people liked and shared. Then, the pressure from the community and the image of someone once so powerful being brought down on social media couldn't help but make Karen panic once again. The criticisms were no longer just words. They were images and videos that she couldn't delete. The neighborhood, where she once was the president of the HOA, now turned its back on her. The neighbors, who had once heard all the stories Karen told about her power, now stood by me. They no longer trusted her, and her social ostracization was inevitable. She tried to make a comeback, but the criticisms from people who once saw her as a powerful figure in the neighborhood continued to surround her. Neighborhood gatherings no longer had Karen's presence, and no one wanted to talk to her. People began to talk about how she had exploited her power to invade others' privacy, taking neighbors' property without permission. Everyone knew that Karen's actions were not only ethically wrong, but also caused legal harm. Finally, when she realized her isolation and her helplessness in facing the growing boycott, Karen had no choice but to lower her head and admit her mistake. She apologized to me, but not with words. She did it through action. She sent a large sum of money as compensation for the property invasion. But all she could do now was try to restore the reputation she had lost. I, with calm and patience, asked for nothing more. The lesson Karen had to learn was too expensive and something she would never forget. As for me, I continued my peaceful life, no longer worrying about the invasion of my property rights, and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. What do you think of the story? Have you ever encountered a Karen like that? Leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Karen Karma channel.